The Wes Penre Papers. A Journey Through the Multiverse. The First Level of Learning. http://wespenre.com. Soulution Section. Soulution Paper Number 1, Breaking the Spell. By Wes Penre, Thursday, July 14, 2011. Part 1. 1. Introduction to the Frequency Fence and the Third Density Quarantine. I have touched this subject in passing earlier in these papers, and many other researchers have gone into it in detail as well. Yet, there are others who guarantee you that there is no such fence, but to me it is obvious, it's just a matter of definitions, and frequency fence and / or quarantine are the ones closest in definitions. To really grasp the vastness of all this, it's mandatory to have a decent grasp of Zecharia Sitchin's work, The Earth Chronicles. I have written a super condensed version of them in my Anunnaki papers, and if you're unfamiliar, or just slightly familiar with Sitchin, I would suggest you read those papers first. The series of papers, which I have called First Level of Learning, to a large degree discuss what could be defined as the Anunnaki problem. According to the stories told in the Sumerian tablets, the Anunnaki did not pass themselves off as gods at first and were not treated as such, either. That came later, and when it happened, some of the Anunnaki took advantage of this and pretended they were God Almighty. Two such people were Namur, the Enlil as Yhvh, and Marduk as himself, and then behind the scenes as any of the gods of the major religions, working in the background. Of course, the Anunnaki are not gods. If we really want to use the word God, it could be as in creator gods, but with a small g. They were miners and geneticists, and they did tamper with our DNA big time. The story goes that the Anunnaki took an already existing, primitive humanoid race here on Earth, Homo erectus, and mixed their own DNA with them to create a labor, slave, race, intelligent enough to understand and follow orders. Thus Homo sapiens sapiens were born, the thinking human. The key word here is primitive. This is what Sitchin says Homo erectus were, and this is apparently what the cuneiform say. And what does Marduk have to say about it? Remember how he changed history? This is most possibly one of the changes he made. The Sumerian tablets were written 5,000 to 6,000 years ago, much of it based on hearsay. Those who wrote down the history knew nothing about it, except what they'd been told by the gods. They knew their present situation and perhaps what happened at large 2-3 generations back, as it was passed down verbally. The rest was most probably changed, just like A.R. Borden indicates in the link, to the Anunnaki's advantage, so we got a wrong picture of the gods. Borden even said to me at one time, whoever wrote the Enuma Elish was taking dictation at least in the granite rock tablet. This was a response to my question whether the A.A.M.I* from Nibiru agree with Sitchin or not regarding their own history on Earth. Apparently, they do. And they probably did take dictation, but was the dictation correct? I have reasons to believe that they had been on Earth much longer than 450,000 to 500,000 years. Some sources, like the Guardian Alliance, insist they've been here for at least 850,000 years, which is almost twice as long. The Pleiadians as well, in some of their lectures, give hints that the gods have been here at least 500,000 years. But it was in the Anunnaki's interest to waylay and deceive mankind into believing in a partly false history. What resonates with me, and always has, even before I read any information on it, is that we were already evolved beings before the Anunnaki came down here and started genetically altering us. There are quite a few sources who agree with this statement, both metaphysical, via channeling, and sensory data streaming. Earth is an experiment, and what we today call Homo erectus was a part of that experiment. These, our forefathers, were seeded by the earlier creator gods, like the Vegans, Lyrans, and their cousins, the Pleiadians, in conjunction with reptilians, insectoids, and others. We see Homo erectus as primitive, because they supposedly didn't live in cities and didn't have technology. However, you who have read one of my previous papers, Genesis paper number 1, Human Origins and the Living Library, know that they were in charge over a highly evolved civilization and they carried 12-strand DNA, fully activated. The Pleiadians are very outspoken about this and consistently tell us that we were evolved beings before the Anunnaki came and we had the ability to move through realities and manipulate matter. Furthermore, they say that many of these abilities were scattered purposely by them. They tell us that all realities have their guardians, and stewardship changes over time. Guardians are not always uplifting and benevolent beings. The guardians who manipulated out genes some 300,000 years ago were a warrior race and kept everybody out who would set us free. The Anunnaki were not alone on the planet even when they were in charge. There were other races here at the same time. Some were working together with the Anunnaki, others were not. The Anunnaki at some point made an agreement and an alliance with the Dracos, a reptilian warrior race who are hybrids of a reptilian race, the Draken, from another galaxy, and humans in an earlier genetic mix. They often were seen working together with the humanoid Anunnaki. This is not mentioned in the Sumerian stone tablets. When I talked to Dr. Borden about DNA, and mentioned to him that Homo erectus had 12-strand DNA, which was split and deactivated downgrading them to 2 strands, he firmly disagrees and says that this is impossible. And even if it was possible, it would grow back within the next 10 generations or so. Then he refers me to the scientific evidence about DNA that is available today on the internet. He also adds that we have thousands of strands in our DNA already now, so 12-strand doesn't make any sense. This may be true or not, but if we have thousands of strands already, why are we calling our DNA today 2 strands, or double helix? However, he fully agrees that there is no such thing as junk DNA. Dr. Borden is frustrated that people can't get their heads around what RNA/DNA is, even in academia and among highly educated researchers, so I told him this is because almost all information we read on this subject is highly scientific and close to impossible to understand, unless we want to spend days after days with dictionaries, getting caught up in endless word chains. So instead I suggested that he writes a paper on DNA which is both educative and simple to read for the average person, because this would be the only way for people to truly understand it. He said it is a great idea, but as I am writing this, he has still not written it despite a reminder. If he does, and when he is finished, I will post it as a separate paper, word for word. His viewpoint on this is that even though the Anunnaki did use us as slave labor and made soldiers out of us to fight their wars, they also sped up our evolution with millions of years by adding their own DNA to our existing one. This is where I disagree. According to almost all research I've made, this is not correct, and I include my intuition in this. We have to understand that science today on Earth, even when it comes from the most brilliant scientists, doesn't know everything. DNA is not only physical, it expands and branches out all through the multiverse. That's how we have access to all there is on a sub-quantum level. You are multidimensional because of your DNA. If 10 of these strands are made dormant, what would happen? We would become very limited to what we are able to experience, just like we are today. 1.1 Ungluing the radio knob. Freedom of frequency. When I talk about a frequency fence around our planet, or a quarantine, there is a physical electronic fence and there is a limitation in our DNA, a limitation which, together with the electronic fence around our planet, keep us trapped in a frequency prison. What happens when someone changes your DNA from 12 helix to 2 helix is that you are almost totally cut off from the multiverse. You forget who you are, where you come from, and who are your true creator gods. When left with a double helix, everything, more or less, is unplugged from our cosmic, multidimensional connection, and left is only what is needed for basic survival. We are locked into limited, controllable frequencies, the ones necessary for us to be able to function as a slave race for the gods. The physical frequency fence, which according to David Icke is controlled from the moon by the Dracos and I would say the A.A.M.I as well. Icke looks at these two races as one, which is incorrect, makes it very hard for the frequencies of light, information, to penetrate. There were times when light frequencies could penetrate after the fact we'd been unplugged, but there was no one there able to receive them. The light-encoded filaments were no longer organized, so the cosmic rays had nothing to plug into and hold onto. Marciniak, Bringers of the Dawn, p.17. When in ignorance, all you don't know becomes a mystery and somewhat scary. It's easy to create fear in such beings, who previously were quite fearless. The Anunnaki, and other service to self, negatively oriented beings, feed off fear. Again, I am not saying all Anunnaki are/were bad, but it is definitely a cultural thing. These beings fed off fear like food, that's beyond any doubt, the evidence is everywhere. They, and other dominant alien races, have created terror and fear on this planet ever since the Anunnaki tampered with the DNA of our ancient ancestors, all the way up to this day. Certain people are more targeted than others by these beings. The more anxiety and fear you feel inside, the more interesting you become to these beings. Those people who have learned to conquer fear are no longer a target in the same way, because they are no longer a food source. The good news is that we can still reactivate our 12-strand DNA by educating ourselves like we do now, and use what we learn. In addition, we have the alignment with the galactic center and the changes in the sun, where more gamma rays than normal, rays that carry information, reach us here on Earth. Still, it doesn't matter how much light is coming through if there is no one here to receive it. If we are not awake and aware and start communicating with our environment, including the sun as a part of our higher self, this information will just go wasted. However, if we do our job, these are very enlightening times, and as we grow as a whole unit of body/mind/soul, our DNA will be reactivated, little by little. Our big chances now, within the nanosecond, between 1987 to 2012. Although third density is a frequency prison, created some 300,000 years ago by Anunnaki geneticists, it is still an experiment, and many alien species are curious to see how we can find our way back to cosmic consciousness. Some of them are impressed by the hard work many of us do to help ourselves and others. The frequency fence, as we've mentioned earlier, works like a radio station. You turn the knob to a certain frequency range and you will hear what is broadcast on that channel. However, unless you turn the knob again in one direction or the other, you will only hear what's broadcast on the radio station you just tuned into. This is how third density on Earth works. The knob is stuck on the frequency range we are currently operating within, and we have to work ourselves up the frequencies and be able to turn the knob at will to experience the whole multiverse. We do this by reactivating all our junk DNA, the 12 helices. Until then, humanity is trapped here. Pretend, in our current state, that we went to other planets, we would only experience them from the frequency range we vibrate on. This means that we may land on a planet and say it's barren with no intelligent life forms, when in fact that's not true. We just can't perceive the intelligent beings living there, because they vibrate on a higher frequency. Another obstacle is time, which we have discussed either. In which time does the astronaut land on a certain planet? Before it was life-bearing, when it is life-bearing, of after? Time is indeed a local custom. We are controlled by fear and terror so that those who are in control can make totally sure we are not able to unglue the dial again, and still, despite of their efforts, they are no longer successful. People are waking up, seeing through the veil of forgetfulness that the RA material is talking about. If you look around, you see that the controllers are getting more and more desperate. They are moving too quickly. In their desperation, they are now trying to implement all new restrictions at once, and people are seeing through it, and in some professions, like nursing, the employees are coming together and refuse to follow the new rules of functional insanity. 2. DNA code activation. The original planners knew what they were doing. They would not give up on humanity this easily and let the Anunnaki get away with their changing the DNA structure in humanity, which refused us the ability to connect in full with the multiverse. The Anunnaki were brilliant multidimensional geneticists, but they didn't know everything about DNA. The original creator gods implanted an activation code into our DNA, which would be activated at a certain time in the future when humanity hopefully are developed and evolved enough to be able to handle this activation, which is embedded in our so-called junk DNA. This time is now. Some of us will handle this transition with excitement and go through it just fine, but others, who are not prepared, will have a harder time. The main thing that is happening is that we start remembering who we are and the timelines of our different incarnations will merge. In other words, in the beginning we will get flashbacks of earlier and future lifetimes, and these flashbacks will feel very real. They will be a few in the beginning but increase in numbers. People who don't understand what this is and meet this new challenge with fear and rejection may even go insane, similar to a schizophrenic person. We may be able to visualize this by first understanding that this is the end times as prophesized, where time on this planet is imploding and linear time is no longer sufficient to carry the human race further. So, similar to a black hole, time is merging and retracting. By experiencing this, when at the same time it is triggering our DNA code, we regain our multidimensional abilities and will ascend. When this happens, and it has already started to happen in many people, go with the flow, look at the new information with hope and excitement and understand what it is you are experiencing, and you will be more than fine. The transition will be fairly easy. During this transition, however, you may or may not experience periods of unease, or some parts of your body will start acting strange, sometimes resulting in pain. However, if you go to the doctor, they may not find the cause to the problem and will act quite confused. This is normal and usually nothing to worry about as these symptoms will disappear with time. On a larger scale, there will be planetary changes as well as changes in the Sunday. We have discussed these previously, but it is not up to us to solve these seemingly unsolvable problems, only to understand them. Even problems are energy, no matter how condensed this energy is. The definition of a problem is intention versus counter-intention, which creates stuck energy, as two or more forces clashing with each other and get stuck. If we see the problem as it is and how it was created, the problem disappears in our own minds and no longer stays as a part of us, unless we manifest it again, wittingly or unwittingly. This is one of the main reasons I want to present a problem as close to how it is manifested from both sides, so that the reader can recognize it and diffuse the stuck energy. Not only will you be able to step out of the problem, but also help the rest of the planet to heal, because others will be affected by your own recognitions. There are people today in the New Age and UFO movements who think we should not expose negativity, because it makes this negativity stronger. I understand where they come from, but I disagree. We need to present the problem as is for it to be understood and discharged. Then, and only then, can we move on past it. Our task, after we understand what is going on, is to ride on the wave of this inner knowledge and understanding, transmit the increased light within us into our local universe, our environment and everything in it, and transform it into unconditional love. This will raise the vibration of our environment and it will spread like ripples on the water when we throw stones into a lake. What one person does is making a huge difference. Dr. Borden and LPGC are trying to, via memes, belief systems, to influence people from all walks in life to be inspired enough to come together, creating the effects of the so-called 3% rule, or the 100th monkey syndrome. The theory is that if 3% of the world population are united in a certain way of thinking, the rest will follow due to that we all are one and of the same multiversal energy. I want to make use of the 3% rule as well, but maybe not using the same memes as LPGC are attempting to create. Important here is that we want to evolve by ourselves and don't need any descending gods to show us how to do it, or to protect us. We have the tools we need, and we don't need their technology either. We evolve by using our own energy, by activating our DNA code and by influencing others in our environment by being examples, and by living what we learn. This is how we expand the mass consciousness. The Pleiadians are talking about Earth having a sister planet in another galaxy. They don't mention which galaxy that might be, but if we go to Oceanus Voyagers 2 book, we see that this sister planet is located in a solar system in the Andromeda Galaxy, approximately 2.2 million light-years from our own Milky Way galaxy. Much because of invader forces like the Sirian A.A.M.I. and the Anunnaki, the original creator gods, who seeded humanity to begin with, called the Brno order by the Guardians, had to hide certain stargates called the Halls of Amenti, which lead to planet Terra, the original Earth from which our present planet stems. How this is related on a higher metaphysical level will be a subject for another paper, but for our purpose, these stargates, the Halls of Amenti, which once upon a time were placed in the core of the Earth, have been moved several times and were once located in the core of a sister planet to Earth in the Andromeda Galaxy. The Halls of Amenti for Earth were created 25 million years ago to allow for teleportation ascension from Earth to Terra when opened. Just like the Pleiadians and the 6th density are a collective, the Guardians tell us that we humans need to work on the reactivation of our original 12-strand DNA to be able to go through the Halls of Amenti and be harvested to the 4th density Terra, which is our original home, after what the Guardians call the Fall, where Terra descended into 3D. The harvest will not happen all at once, but gradually, and start in 2012. However, time is limited, as the Stargate will close again around 2017. Those who haven't been able to activate their DNA code by then will continue evolving on another 3D planet, just like the RA Collective says, while those who ascend will pass through the Stargates and enter a higher density Earth, Terra. Although the Halls of Amenti Stargates are density 2, Terra exists in a parallel universe called Hu-2, which consists of dimensions 4-5-6. The Guardians have their own way of explaining the differences between densities and dimensions, but for now, all we need to know is that from our perspective, and as far as these papers of the first level of learning go, the ascension will be to a 4th density planet. Some readers of the RA material don't like the idea of a harvest and believe it to be a selfish and negative thing, because you leave those behind who are not ready to ascend. I used to think the same way after had read the Wingmaker's material. Mahunahi, who runs the site, as well as LPGC, are talking about a collective ascension, a no one left behind attitude. However, the more I research this I come to the realization that this is not a selfish or unselfish thing, it's a graduation. If you're in school and miss too many classes or don't do your homework, resulting in that you can't graduate, you will need to take the classes again. It's the same thing with ascension, it has to do with how well we are able to handle energy. If we are not handling energy well enough to go to the next level, we need to go back and do it all over again. Here's the Guardian Alliance directly. Ascension is not some lofty spiritual concept designed by the minds of man, it is a literal, tangible scientific process of the evolution of consciousness and biology within the laws of energy mechanics that apply to a multidimensional reality system. You can go about your human lives, with your consciousness confined to the limitations presently imposed by your physical body, or you can learn the mechanics by which those limitations can be released, and begin to experience the reality of freedom that is the comprehension of yourself as soul. Whether or not you view ascension and multidimensional evolution as a reality while you are alive on Earth, you will be directly faced with that reality once your consciousness has passed out of physical life and into the multidimensional framework. At the death of your physical body you will discover that your consciousness lives on and your evolution continues. All souls will eventually evolve and ascend through the 15-dimensional scale, to re-emerge a sentient identity within the realms of pure consciousness beyond the dimensional systems. Immortality, freedom from death, disease, and pain are the natural birthrights of your species. Voyagers 2 page 106. This is a personal responsibility, and although Guardians from Hu-2, Harmonic Universe 2, can assist in this process, the ultimate success of DNA building lies in the hands of the embodied consciousness who directs this process by the way in which personal energy is used and applied. Voyagers 2 page 108. The process of ascension is simply going up the dimensional scale by raising the particle pulsation rhythm of your body. It's a holy concept because that is what the concept of spiritual evolution really is about. As you do this you pull in more at one-ment with your God/source. So ascension is a religious concept and a scientific concept all at once. It's not a punishment not to ascend and be part of the harvest. However, a window of opportunity has opened between 1987 to 2012, and if we don't take advantage of this now it will be so much harder later on, until a new certain alignment with the galactic center is taking place. In the end we are all ascending back to Source, but due to the experiences we choose to have, it will take longer for some and go faster for others. Still, those who take longer and need to go through another cycle in third density are highly contributing to the overall experience of consciousness in the multiverse and are enriching the understanding of self, which is the goal of Source, and therefore it is our goal as well. This is done through individual experiences, no matter what these experiences are. Experiences and learning processes are needed in all densities and dimensions, and no one is better than the other just because he or she moves up to another density. I hope the reader can see the point here. This is how multiverse physics works and everybody is contributing. Our DNA is being charged up. Everything that goes with it that I've learned through my research and I held as true is happening. I can't deny it, and even if the whole world told me I was wrong, I know what is happening inside and what abilities I am gaining. The Pleiadians say that new helices or strands are being formed as the light-encoded filaments are beginning to bundle themselves together. Marciniak 1992, Bringers of the Dawn, p.29 OPCIT, and I can feel it happening and see it happen in others. We are on our way to create a new world and a new reality. I hope as many as possible are following on this journey. 3. The quarantined Earth and the misuse of energy. So what is the difference between quarantine and frequency fence? I have sometimes used these terms interchangeably, but they are two different things. The difference is that the fence, which can be compared to a radio station, was set up by the Anunnaki to keep us trapped within a certain frequency band, while the quarantine was set up by other ETS, often in near-Earth space, in an effort to protect the living library. It had to do with the misuse of energy, like what happened during the Atlantis period, when nuclear power was used extremely irresponsibly by gods and humans, and it blew up land masses more than once. Pleiadian Lecture, June 12, 2010, The Internet, CD 3, Track 12. Although there was an attempt by earlier creator gods to stop the destruction of misuse of nuclear power during Atlantis, the intervention only made things worse and a nuclear war broke out. Asha Yanadine, 2002 Voyagers 2. Finally, the original creator gods and other guardians and protectors of the living library quarantined Earth. The invaders, Anunnaki and others, could leave, because it was not their planet, in terms of how the previous creator gods looked at it, but humans, who had gone along with the ride and used nuclear bombs as well, has to prove themselves worthy to be part of the galactic community before the quarantine is lifted. It's up to us to prove that we are not using nuclear and negative energy for military purposes but under clear restrictions. There are those ETS out there who don't look kindly on those who destroy our planet. Today, we are on our way to repeat the stupid mistakes we did during Atlantis, starting with the atom bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which opened up wormholes in many places on Earth, letting uninvited visitors in. Earth advertised its coordinates all over the multiverse and ripped holes in space where there weren't any before. Not only did we do it twice, we have been blowing off nuclear bombs in the ocean and in the deserts around the world frequently since WW2. UFOs have been seen during all such events, circling around the explosion areas. The beings watching us are less than pleased, to put it mildly. They did not interfere at those times, although I've heard it was a borderline intervention. Now, when we are trying out missiles in space, they do interact. ETS say, here, but no further. There are a lot of witnesses, and I've also seen article in mainstream media, where UFOs have intervened when we've tried to use weapons in space. Here is Professor Robert Jacobs of the U.S. Air Force. So this thing UFO fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it and then it moves to the other side and fires another beam of light. And the warhead tumbles out of space. What message would I interpret from that? The UFOs were telling us don't mess with nuclear warheads, Major Mansman said. You are never to speak of this again. After an article about the incident years later, I would get phone calls all night long. People would call and start screaming at me. One night somebody blew up my mailbox. Reports like the above clearly shows where ETS stand on this issue. Yes, as intelligent species who have developed on this planet as a part of the living library, we are eventually meant to be the guardians of it, not the destroyers. In attempts to claim ownership of Earth, in arrogance and stupidity, we use nuclear warheads to show our power. I'll tell you a no secret, no one is impressed. And believe it or not, but animals, oh, so smart, who are more multi-D than we are, often migrate out of this reality to one that is safer and they can survive better. Pleiadian Lecture, June 12, 2010, The Internet, CD 3, Track 12. An extinct animal species, whom we in our madness have made extinct, or almost extinct, are not so. Nothing disappears, it just changes location in time and space. So it's not so strange to imagine that some versions of Earth have a quarantine or frequency control around them, while other versions of Earth, that operate on higher value and consciousness, don't. There are many futures existing at once. They are not necessarily waiting for us to create them, they already exist. It's up to us which future Earth we want to experience and live on. Do we want to live on a planet where we have to duck for the warheads and where sneaky power-hungry ETS and their human cohorts want to make machines out of us, or do we want to live on an Earth where there is harmony and peace and where we live per the universal law of one, where the inhabitants live by these values and unconditional love? The decision for most people, of course, is not hard when I put it like this. However, the problem is to get people to the point where they read this paper, or other information of a similar context, are convinced that these negative things will happen if we don't change. Those who think that things will sort themselves out and everything bad will go away by themselves and just read spiritual stuff or conspiracy theories on the weekend for fun or for the thrill of it, are going to end up in the nightmare I am here describing. Not only do we need to educate ourselves, but more importantly, we need to live and apply what we learn. I can't emphasize this enough. The futures that are already in existence are drawn to you, or you to them, as you start imagining them and create them inside. By raising your frequency and reactivating your DNA, you start vibrating accordingly to the future you desire. There are multiple Earths, more than we can imagine, and they are all there as probable futures. It's like being a child, when your parent opens a candy box with lots of different candy. Pick one. This is why it is so important to be very, very clear in our thoughts and in our desires. Our thoughts and emotions are the two most powerful tools we have as human beings, and we need to use them wisely, for we get the reality we dream up, always, no exception. We can't blame anybody else for the reality we're in now, or the reality we choose in the future. Be clear. It's extremely important. If you feel you aren't, start working on it now. Sloppy language and sloppy thoughts will create sloppy reality. Your body is your best friend because it's your tool to ascension, but it is quite literal. It follows your directions in thought and speech. If you keep on saying, "It's a pain in the neck," your body is going to respond by giving you a literal pain in the neck. On the contrary, if you tell your body it is beautiful and a perfect vehicle, it's going to respond accordingly. 4. Subliminal messages in films and on music CDs, and the effects of electronics. Most of us have probably at one time or another wondered about how everything could turn so fast from horseback riding, wagons and trains being run on coal, to our modern society with high tech. Seen from the perspective of human evolution, it's almost like a blink of an eye. Many wonder, but few know. In fact, our modern technological society was not entirely developed by us humans. Most of this technology came from aliens via TTP number. We gave them what they needed and we got what we needed. And much of this technology was used within the military for warfare, for business and trade, and for direct control of humankind. Today, after 9/11 and other so-called terrorist attacks, governments are developing the perfect surveillance system to watch all citizens 24/7. Then, people in the New Age movement or those who are waking up spiritually may say that there are now many good movies and TV series revealing to the people what is going on. However, when we watch a show on spirituality, subliminally we are hit with a frequency which keeps us from original thinking. Often, the subliminal tells us to remain in a survival, go to work, be silent and fearful society. The day after we've watched the show, we still go to work as usual, perhaps even with a stronger feeling that we have to. Subliminal technology was to a large degree developed by ETS. In 1992, the Pleiadians had the following to say about subliminals. The use of subliminals to upset human consciousness has become a worldwide program. If you think about the houses that have 2, 3, and 4 televisions in them, you must agree that this has been a very successful marketing program. Some people who know about the subliminals on television feel that they are immune to them. However, the effects of television are so permeating that no matter how clear you say you are going to be, you cannot counterbalance what the technology is presently doing to your vibrational frequency. We have said that there are entities who feed off your emotional bodies. Think about what a clever tool television is for them. All over the world, billions of humans are emitting emotional juices into the atmosphere based upon what they are watching on the tube. They don't have to have too many wars anymore to get you all riled up, they can simply make movies. Marciniak 1992, Bringers of the Dawn p.91, OPCIT. And then we have the music industry, of course, with subliminal messages on the records and CDs, called backward masking. It's much more common than people think. Then we have the change of the standard A tuning, A equals 440 Hz, from 444 Hz, which is much more harmonious and in line with cosmic frequency. The change was apparently introduced by the Rockefeller Foundation when exploiting military music. In spite of many conductors and musicians' protests, the change was also implemented on classical music and eventually rock music. The real introduction to low-frequency rock music was made by the British rock group, Black Sabbath in 1969. The official story goes that the guitar player, Tony Iommi, had lost some of his fingertips in an accident, so it hurt to play on strings that were tuned in standard tuning. He resolved this by tuning down his guitar to a low dB, D-flat, which created the characteristic Black Sabbath sound. Many say they were the forerunner for other heavy metal and death metal groups, who still tuned down their instruments to a lower tuning. This, of course, creates certain effects in the listener. If you also add distortion to the guitar sound, Black Sabbath even used a distortion box on the bass guitar sometimes, like in the song NIB, something unheard of before. You can create very unwanted emotions in the listener, which of course was the purpose. It doesn't help that you are singing about Lucifer and Satan as well. Their defenders say that they were Christians and sang against Satan and warned us from him, but this is just a clever psyop. All of the Black Sabbath members were into the black arts, admitted by Geezer Butler in a YouTube video. The fact that they mention Satan, Lucifer, and demonic possession in the lyrics is enough to trigger the subconscious mind, which does not distinguish between if the message is positive or negative. However, with the music that comes to it, the mind does interpret it as negative. The image of the rock group does the rest: long hair, rebellious and dangerous. If you don't believe the music industry is totally corrupt and controlled, I strongly advise you to read Inside the LC, The Strange but Mostly True Story of Laurel Canyon and the Birth of the Hippie Generation by David McGowan. It's probably the most detailed story of rock music with the most amount of truth that is out there. It's impossible to read the series of articles and say it didn't happen and that it's not happening today. Everybody should open their minds to this and read it. If you are unprepared, it's quite shocking. The following may not make me very popular in some camps, but something that is very destructive is the mega rock concerts. If we understand that the ETS who are controlling us from other dimensions are feeding off our emotions, what then is a rock concert? It's an orgasm of emotions. The musicians are the first to receive all the excitement from the pumped-up audience, who transmits both raw energy and a lot of sexual energy at the same time. The musicians then work as antennas for the other dimensional beings, who suck up the emotions and feed off them. More power to them. That's one big reason why band aids, farm aids, and whatnot are arranged, with huge arenas and marathon music playing almost around the clock. Not to mention the rave festivals where people are taking ecstasy and dance all night. Woodstock in the 1960s was a forerunner and a huge experiment in human behavior on a mass scale under the influence of drugs. The authorities were passing out drugs to the audience, who was stunned by this but of course welcomed it. To be able to tune out as much as possible from the frequencies which are there to trap us and keep us trapped, we need to unplug the television, be very careful what music we listen to. Yes, I know that's the hard part. Only listen to uplifting music which takes you to higher realms of existence. Some say they feel high when they listen to death metal, but it's certainly not the same high as listening to Mozart of Beethoven. The high the death metal fan is feeling is adrenaline flowing through their body, seemingly uplifting them, when in fact it does the opposite, without the listener being aware of it. How much criminality and drug abuse can be traced back to the music industry and the products they are releasing? The percentage is much higher than most of us can even imagine. How about cell phones and computers? These days almost all people, at least in first world countries, use them all the time. Many of us are using electronics during the day more than we are off them. Our job situation requires it, and then we continue when we get home, and the same thing goes for cell phones. Electronics jam our frequencies, that should be obvious. There are incompatibilities between our own frequencies and those which are emitted by electronic devices. Most of the time this is done intentionally, but even when it's not, it still doesn't vibrate with us. This can be extremely damaging for our nervous system and stop us from effectively evolving as body/mind/spirit. We need our bodies and our minds to ascend to higher frequency bands, because our bodies are carrying much of our DNA, which we need to evolve. Electronics tamper with this structure and is therefore very destructive on our system, not to mention that it can produce cancer and other unwanted effects on the body and mind. I am using electronics myself, both when I'm writing my papers, I'm using a computer right now, and at work some of the time, mostly for email purposes. However, I rarely use my cell phone and I never ever watch TV. I stopped 5 years ago and I'm a happy camper. My plan is to use the computer less and less once I'm done with my writings and return more and more to nature. I am working on paying off all my debts, and I mean all, and become self-sufficient. We haven't seen the bottom of the rabbit hole yet, but I'm going to be prepared together with my family. The less dependent on the old system of functional insanity, the better. I am a free spirit and I can do whatever I want. I can dream, and I'm good at it. As an artist I can dream up whole realities, and I know what I want, and what I dream I will get. There will be more to follow, ripple effect again, just like I will follow those who went before me. Those who tune in will choose a similar future reality in a future version of Earth. The old world is declining rapidly and chaos and disasters are coming upon people faster and more drastically than ever. This is normally what happens just before a transition. Those who want to hang on to the old, like the captain who is determined to sink together with the ship, will perish or be caught up in a very disturbing reality, while those who choose not to be part of it will create a new existence on a higher level. However, to be able to do the latter, we need to master two of our worst enemies to ascension, fear and anxiety. Not until we have learned to conquer these emotions can we ascend to something we like better. 5. How to conquer fear and anxiety. It all began with the nanosecond in 1987, or around that time. More and more people started waking up, realizing that something was very wrong with their lives. Someone was controlling it. The global elite and those who manipulate them saw this and knew that it was coming and were prepared. A new concept was implemented into the work environment. It was called multitasking. A person who previously was used to doing more or less one thing at the time at work now had to learn how to do several things at once. To a certain degree, it's nothing wrong with this, and if done in the right way, it can even be therapeutic in the sense that we become more multidimensional. However, when it's done with the intention to overwhelm the person, it has the opposite effect. It stresses us out and keeps us more attached to linear time as we have to complete several tasks within certain time limits. There is no time to do anything else. Who, in that situation, has time to be multidimensional? Here is a practice in learning how things are planned in different layers by those in charge. Level 1, lower level planning. As times go bad and the economy crashes, planned event, the industry does not want to employ more people. Instead they lay off people and let the ones who are left do the job of those they got rid of. So now we have an almost impossible situation, where people feel enslaved and taken advantage of. Often, they don't get a raise either, which is also blamed on the bad financial situation. People who have some insights think the reason for the unemployment rates and not enough people employed to do the job is because the global elite intentionally crashed the economy. Level 2, lower level planning. The unemployed have enough problems trying to make ends meet, while the few who do the job of the many have to multitask until they are absolutely exhausted, often working long hours without pay. Employees are frustrated and don't understand why the management is making totally irrational decisions which do not enhance the workers or the company, but rather destroy both. No one says anything, because they are programmed to think, oh well, at least I have a job. People with some extra insights may think that they have us multitask so we can't see what the global elite are doing behind the scenes. No one has time or energy to get involved and stop them. Level 3, higher level planning. The solar system is aligning with the galactic center, and the sun and the galaxy are sending loads of information to us to upgrade our RNA DNA, but for that to happen there has to be someone here on our end who receives this information. If people are too caught up and involved in the functional insanity around them, there are fewer people who are receptive to the encoded information carried on the gamma rays. More people miss the boat and don't get upgraded. Some people with higher awareness can see this. Level 4, higher level planning. Mind you, levels 1 to 4 are happening simultaneously to have the optimal effect on us Lulus, humans. Companies run themselves to the ground and the media are blaming it on the bad economy. That has nothing to do with it. The bad economy was planned to set levels 1 to 4 in motion. We hear on the news that old, established companies now are bankrupt and have to merge with other companies, or businesses who still are standing on their feet are merging anyway just in case things get worse, and after all, they have to keep their position on the market. On the highest level, no one cares which company goes out of business and who is not. The corporations that count are all owned by the same people on the very top. Smaller businesses, owned by honest, decent people, stand no chance on the market anymore and disappear in endless streams of bankruptcies and go out of business. The end result is a global structure which is a preparation for the future to come. The smart cities are already in place, and the real owners, who normally don't travel in limousines but in spacecraft, can come and inspect the result. The reptilians and the Dracos have done the groundwork here on Earth, and their masters, the A.A.M.I, can come back and inspect their real estate and give their approval. Can you see how this is all connected, and what seems to be separate events are not so? It doesn't matter which insights a person may have, whether it's on a level 1 or a level 3, it's both going to be correct, but only part of the picture. And it doesn't end with level 4, either. This setup by the PTB number creates fear and anxiety in most people. It brings these emotions up to the surface. People get sick from them, sometimes seriously ill, as they tear on the immune system. The plan, to a large degree, is working, but people are still waking up, because when put into a corner where there is no obvious solution, people can become very creative and start thinking outside the box. This is what is happening to a percentage of the enslaved population. When life is speeding up, which it is, both due to the nanosecond and the general job situation, we need to slow down, even if everything around us tells us we can't do that. The PTB know that the solution is to slow down, so therefore they make sure our life keeps being hectic. We need to unplug ourselves from the matrix. What we need to do more than anything else is to rest. Some people are needing a tremendous amount of sleep and rest. It's not because we're getting lazy. Here are the Pleiadians again. There will be times when some of you will wish to sleep 18 hours. Do it. It is necessary. You have no idea of the lands you travel to and the work done on your physical body when you sleep. It is the time when you are unplugged from this reality and recharged and taught in other realities. The bridges, and your eyes, will open between realities, and you will begin to see and carry these memories. Marciniak 1992, Bringers of the Dawn p.177, OPCIT. Yes, the times are difficult, and before it turns around, they will be even more difficult for most people. Instead of fearing them and build up anxiety, welcome the difficult times and let them teach you what you are here to learn. In a status quo, there is nothing to learn, but in difficult times we can grow tremendously. If we look at our challenges without fear and anxiety, believe it or not, we can even be excited about them, because the learning lessons are so great and we have the possibility to grow tremendously. I know this to be true from own experience. I have learned to conquer most of my fears and carry no anxiety inside, and I am working on the fears I still have. So I really feel that the challenges in my life teach me a lot. And they will teach you a lot too. Give yourself an endless amount of love and encouragement. Say, "Hi self, I love you and you are wonderful and beautiful." In the morning, or whenever you see her first, say hello to the sun and tell her you love her and ask her to give you great energies that will help you get information so you can flourish and prosper through the day. Learn where in the sky she is at different times of the day and send your thoughts in that direction as soon as you can think of it. Also, when you wake up, the first thing you can do is to tell yourself, "Today is going to be a wonderful day. Everything I do, and everything that happens to me will be in my best interests and will help me grow." You are setting the rules for the day when you first wake up in the morning. If you think, "Oh no, another hellish day at work. I'm going to be so worn out I can't stand it," then that's what's going to happen. Our thoughts and emotions are tremendously powerful. Stress is always harmful to the body, if experienced in large quantities over a long duration of time. It leads to blocked chakras, and body problems always have to do with blocked chakras, even injuries. When things are not working for you, and you pull things into your life that you don't want, look at your belief systems. The ones you're operating on, or one or more of them, are obviously not working. There is a fine line between a catalyst and non-functional belief systems. A catalyst is when something is happening to you and you can pick up some good experience from it, handle the situation and move on. An old, non-functional belief system is one that doesn't enhance your life and doesn't make you grow. Recognize why it is that keeps you attracting certain kinds of energies over and over which make your life harder, and simply tell yourself that you are not available for that anymore and change your way of thinking. If this doesn't work, you are stuck in fear somewhere, which makes it hard to let go. You still need to recognize this fear and realize that it is your own creation, and let go. If you do, the stuck energy flow will become fluid again, and the reason for the fear you had will start dissolving and disappear, or change direction. We all need to be exceptionally clear in thought, in words, and deed. I've said it before, but these are the times when we can't fiddle around and be sloppy on any of the three. The energies are so fast that we manifest quite immediately what we think and feel. Negative thinking will draw to us more negative energies in quantity, and positive thinking will do the opposite. There's no time to sit and say, "Yes, but." We need to train ourselves, or we'll go in directions we most probably don't want to experience. We need to be clear how we sit, how we stand, how we talk to people, what kind of images we put before our eyes. It's a matter of being in charge of both body and mind and know what we're doing 24/7. We need to dream, even when we're awake, but at the same time stay grounded in our bodies, and take care of them and eat what makes the body feel good and strong. If you're reading this and your body is not in the best of shapes, do what you can to improve your situation. Any improvement will lead to a better outcome. We often take better care of our cars than we do our bodies. Still, our bodies are what keeps us alive in the cosmos and are ours to use for multidimensional purposes. I am also saying this in preparation for times to come. Many think that the financial meltdown and the financial low has reached the bottom and now everything will be better, but don't get fooled because the long trend is showing soaring statistics. There will be more crises on the financial market, more crashes. I walk the dog in the evenings and I see foreclosures everywhere. People have to go from their homes because they can't afford them anymore. If things like this seem to be happening to you, clear your energies. You need to have the intentions that you are always in the right place in the right time and everything will turn out better than best for you. Be sure of it. Clear your field from negative thoughts by putting positive thoughts there to replace them as soon as you spot them. Train yourself to recognize the destructive thinking and tell yourself, "Hey, that's not what I want. Cancel that." Then replace the negative thoughts with positive ones. Practice this on a daily basis, as soon as you hear the nagging in your head, and quite soon these negative thoughts will diminish and disappear. Your survival depends on it. Then bring your positive energies to others in your environment and those who are anywhere near your own vibration will pick up and automatically be more positive themselves. And they will know you had a big hand in their own development. Another negative emotion is anger and fury. They are negative because they are out of control and affect the environment negatively. They create fear and anxiety. Anger and fury are the two emotions positively oriented aliens have the hardest time with when comes to humans. It has been reported from the link plenum meetings * that when a human gets angry, the aliens withdraw. If you feel furious, angry or frustrated, the first thing will be to recognize the feeling, but not to be so identified with it that you become the feeling. This is often what happens with these particular emotions. Once you recognize the feeling, you may face a person who is not very nice to you, get neutral about it and ask yourself, what is this feeling telling me? Do I need to do something? Do I need to pay more attention? Is it telling me to speak up and not hide what I think, or is it telling me I don't need to be available for this? Find out what is going on and why you are feeling what you are feeling before you act out. You then diffuse your own energy by recognizing it instead of using it destructively by letting it out on another person. If you ask yourself some questions, there will be an answer. And remember, if tumult and chaos seem to happen around you, it's important to take the advice I've given, but also be sure that this is the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new. Everything that's old and doesn't work, whether it's inside of you or on a planetary basis, has to go to make place for the new to come. It's a normal process and I am giving you a few tools to use to make the transition easier. Whatever you do, don't stop feeling. Feelings are essential to our enlightenment and evolvement as individuals and species. That's what makes humanity so unique. We have to look far and wide in the universe to find a species with such a wide amount of feelings. Alien who are watching us are amazed and impressed, because it's our thoughts and emotions that will help us evolve. The only concern positive aliens have is that we seem to have such a hard time controlling our feelings, so they don't control us. It's perfect to feel a lot. Let the feelings be strong when they're positive and include love and light, and acknowledge them when they are destructive, work with them and transpire them, and use them as experience. The worst thing we can do is to suppress our feelings and pretend they are not there. Some people think it's macho not to feel, and they are bragging about it and look down on those who do feel. That's not the best path to go if you're human. What's unique about us is that we have such a wide variety of DNA from a huge variety of galactic and intergalactic beings as part of the living library, and in that sense we are divine and have enormous potentials if we are willing to develop them. We are still primitive now in comparison with other ETs out there, but they too know our potentials and want to see us grow. If we grow, they grow. By some aliens we are considered royalty, because Homo sapiens sapiens in its current version has DNA from A.A.M.I. Royalty and that of the Orion Queens, as an intermarriage between the two species was orchestrated in the far past. The ones who mixed their genes with ours were both of the A.A.M.I. royal bloodline as well as that of the Orion Queens. Another thing to remember is that you never need to know how you are going to get from one point in your development to another. All you need to do is to put a clear picture in your mind of what you want, and the universe will adjust accordingly. Don't write down a long future journey book telling you step by step what you need to do. Let your energies take care of it. This is not some lofty new age statement, it can be backed up scientifically and has to do with basic energy flows. And if other pictures keep popping up that are not exactly in line with your first picture, perhaps you need to refine the first picture a bit and your energies will be clear again. Recognize the changes in your life and look where they are taking you. If they are not taking you to where you want to go, you are changing your original picture subconsciously to adjust to situations around you. If this happens, you are not in charge and you let others take the steering wheel. I am aware of that sometimes things need to be done that are not 100% in line with our basic intentions, but when this happens and you need to go along with it for any good reason, still keep your basic intentions in mind. Tell yourself that this is just a temporary thing I need to do, but then I'm on my way again. However, most of the time, when you feel you don't want to do something, you can say no, unless it has to do with your job. Even with your job, if it leads you off track, it's time to look for another one. To go back to fear and anxiety a little bit more, when we're in fear, the ones behind the scenes are in control, and when we love, we are in control. Or, the power ends where the fear begins. They have no way of controlling positive energies. The only thing they can do when they see people getting more and more positive is to counter it with more and more negativity, which is being done now. If we are aware of this and don't let it affect us anymore, they have lost and can do nothing but give up. We want to reach that point as a humanity. And remember, it's the few who are controlling the many. The ETs who are behind the global elite need humans to execute their commands. So long as they do so, they are not breaking the law of free will, because these human puppets have agreed to do this against their own species. The ET controllers can't just come down in spaceships and take control, that would be an invasion and they would be stopped by those who guard this planet. Worst case scenario would be a war between the invader force and the Guardians. They want to avoid that for more reasons than avoiding a war. To control humanity, they need to keep hidden and us in ignorance, or their mission will fail. They need humans to keep humans in fear and agony, and this is how they have controlled us for thousands of years. This may change soon, and the non-human controllers may show their real faces in a disclosure that is well planned and not in our favor, but for now they still want to keep hidden for a while. Fear is a choice, and a part of raising consciousness is about eradicating fear. Pleiadian Lecture, October 9, 2010, Revolution of the Mind, CD number 1, Track 13. Fear can be a good thing in a fight or flight situation when we are directly faced with a challenge that is threatening us or our family/friends. However, it's not appropriate to choose fear in situations that are instigated by people who want to control us for their own purposes with imperatives that are destructive for us. If we can't handle the situation right away, like with the ET control on Earth, instead of being fearful, we need to raise our frequency above fear so that the negative forces cannot control us anymore. And most importantly, if you look at a current situation and there is really nothing there to be fearful about, don't engage in fear that is not appropriate, or it will play you right into the hands of those in power. Look around in your local universe and tell yourself you live in a safe world. The flowers are growing outside your window, the neighbor is cutting the lawn and the birds are singing. Tell yourself that your world is safe and there is nothing to be fearful about. And if you have a chaotic job where everybody is so stressed out that they start attacking each other because they are too overwhelmed to take in any communication whatsoever, and everybody is afraid to lose their job, you need to tell yourself that in the midst of this chaos you're safe and everything will work out better than best for you. Repeat this to yourself as often as you can, take deep breaths, and if possible, do short meditations, and just do the best you can with the best of attitudes. Soon enough, your local universe will adjust, people will get more peaceful around you if you know how to manage your own energies. On the opposite side of the coin, if you believe that all bad things possible can happen to you, and these things are always heading in your direction, and perhaps tomorrow you will get fired, stand on the street without a home, then this is what your future will get. You have probably seen people standing there, sinking in quicksand, and while sinking they are saying, "See, I told you this was going to happen." Yes, this person is right, he or she told you this was going to happen, and that's why it happened. There is great power in beliefs, so be aware of what your beliefs are. If there is no immediate reason to be afraid, tuck your fear away and say, "Fear, only come out when I really need you." Sometimes it takes a while to change thought patterns, but that's the key thing right now, to change old thought patterns that don't support your growth. A good practice to change your belief system may be to sit down for as much time you can spare, 10 to 20 minutes a day, in a quiet, safe environment, all by yourself, and say to yourself with intention, "I can be prosperous, I can live safely without fear, I am living in a safe environment and everything that happens will turn out in my favor and be better than best." Then, when you're done, you can go back to your life again and live it according to your old, non-functional belief systems. However, if you do this practice regularly, you will find after a while that it's ridiculous to live the old way. Why hang on to old beliefs when I can live by the new ones? Your mind will change its pattern. Another important thing to conquer fear or other emotions that bring you down is to have a good support system. Having at least one person you can bounce ideas on is extremely helpful. Not everybody is that lucky, and if not, practices like the one above will still work. Believe in yourself and trust that you can change in a way that will turn a vicious cycle around. It's all about beliefs, and beliefs can change, but it's up to each and everyone to be willing to make the changes. Once we have mastered these obstacles and we don't fall for the fearful news we hear about in the media, and we see through the fact that we humans are still used as slave labor for ET races, we can start changing our vibrations to the point that we break the frequency fence and see the multiverse on the other side, depict it. Powerful images can work as guidelines. We are the winners in this game. If you've followed me so far, we're on the same frequency and we are here to break free, and many, many more will follow.